Welcome to Inner Power Particles. I'm Farhad, the host of the podcast. We talk with entrepreneurs and leaders about how they have solved the challenges in their life or business and how it has transformed into new inner strength in them. And with this, we want to help that you also can look at your life or business situations and see how you can solve the challenges in them, and through that transform them also into new inner strengths, inner power particles in you. Enjoy the show.
Hi, Ingmar.
Hi, Farhad.
Let's introduce ourselves first. Ingmar, can you share who you are? What do you do today?
I'm Ingmar, and I have been for the past 20 years working with teams, mostly offsite, like team building sessions with a company called MAD in Estonia. We've been quite busy doing this. Collectively about 80 to 100 trainings per year. So in 20 years, it does quite a lot of numbers. Also from 2019, I have been kind of linked to Cocoon program, where I also met Farhad. So doing some mentoring and also having a local men's circle that gathers weekly. I live rurally in southeast Estonia, so living quite slow life in a sense with family and doing some forest work and gardening also. So,
Okay, but 80 to 100 a year, that's actually quite a lot. It's like every 3 days there's an event.
yeah, we have a team of 4, and not everybody is involved in every event, but yeah, for me, usually it ends up around 50 per year, maybe slightly less.
Okay, I've also introduced myself. I'm Farhad. I live in Riga, Latvia. I'm a mentor with the focus on self-discovery and authenticity for entrepreneurs and people who lead companies, and also departments and teams in companies. You gave a very nice overview also about your other side of life besides work. So as for me, I love nature also, but I don't live in nature. I live in the capital city, but I go hiking often. Also, I love social dance, bachata and salsa, and recently have resumed learning to sing. Let's share also why it's us talking about this topic concerning fathers. So what is this topic? We will talk in a minute, but why it's us talking about it. And I will try to give as compressed as possible overview about why it's me being here, and I will also ask Ingmar you the same question. All right. So about my journey with father. My father is Uzbek, mother is Latvian. So I come from a mixed family. And my father left the family when I was 5. I was never hearing anything from him or seeing anything from here except the memories that I had. And the memories were very violent. I had the memories that he was violent in his behaviors. He was using alcohol, physically, emotionally abusive. And these memories were quite with a quite heavy load of emotions also. And the emotions were hatred. That is what I felt till the age of around 30. Also, I was told that he was dead. So meaning sometime when I was a kid that he died. But in my early 30s, I got the curiosity to find him. And I was telling to friends that at least his grave somewhere in Uzbekistan. So I set on a mission to find him, but I also had the feeling that he's alive. And I found him. It took a few years to find him in Uzbekistan. He turned to be alive. I went there. First time it was just to meet him, to understand how he is, who he is. Then after a couple of years, I went again. That was the time when I connected with him. We established a very good connection. I didn't feel already any hatred. It was more curiosity / disappointed. And then I went third time, and that was the time when I felt that all this disappointment also went away, and it all got replaced with acceptance and feelings of love and bonding, and it was a very nice trip also. And shortly after this third trip and meeting him, he passed away with cancer, and I felt quite light about this because I felt that we have accomplished our relationship journey here on this earth, that we we reestablished the connection, we rebuilt it on a good level, and then he left. Therefore, I feel quite at peace also when I heard these news. Of course, I felt sad, but I wasn't like devastated or not. And yeah, so now I feel easy, peaceful. Sometimes I feel there's still some unresolved sadness coming from childhood and that period, but it's not charged with this negative tension or rejection or resistance. So that's my story in very short. Ingmar, how about you? Why are you in this call on the topic of relationship with father?
Well, you beautifully represent the story when you kind of can rescue your father from the belly of the beast, and I kind of represent the story where you cannot, and still you can kind of overcome this this thing that happened to you. My father and mother had, as I understand it, mostly a passionate physical relationship, and my father never wanted any responsibility as family or children as such. And in these days, in the late 60s, early 70s, the abortion was the main way of dealing with the unwanted outcomes. So as my mother told me, he always said to her that when things happen, you get an abortion, and that when she had done so multiple times, she then with me said that now I won't do it anymore. So I kind of represent the side where this archetypal story when father is devouring his own children, and I was the one who got away. He wanted to exterminate, but my mother said no, and of course that was kind of the end of their relationship, and he never took the responsibility. We had interactions, and also I have a couple of memories. Interestingly, the things that you remember the most are these violent, threatening emotional memories. And the first one I remember is that also my father, although he was very educated and wrote even a book and was teaching in university, he was also an alcoholic, and one of the memories was that we were in sauna together with my mother, and father was drunk outside with an axe trying to break in. So that was kind of my first memory that I can remember now. Then the second one was when I saw my father fighting with his father, and the fight was about since the setting was an old Orthodox church where my great-grandfather had been a minister, and so there was some religious icon or painting that they were fighting about, and my grandfather was already pretty old and was trying to take the painting away from the church. And then I remember seeing them fighting about this religious item, which kind of stuck in my mind. And the third memory was when I got my first girlfriend, and I was with my father at the seaside. And so we started throwing stones in the water, and kind of ended up in the competition. And I threw a stone further than my father, but he wouldn't recognize me for it. He just said, no, it was, I threw much farther than you. So he kind of took this moment away from me in a sense that he didn't recognize my throw, but said that he was better. And this kind of stuck me in my mind. So when I was about 20 years old, he then totally rejected me. He basically said that, no, you are not my son at all. You're somebody else's kid, and your mother basically made the whole thing up that I'm your father and I'm not your father. And so he also disinherited me in kind of a way when he was already in a terminal condition in hospital. Kind of a mysterious thing that he was found lying in the pool of blood on the street, and kind of lingered on to life for about couple of months before he passed away without being able to speak. the last thing I remember of him, I went to see him in the hospital when he was unconscious. And I looked at him, and I couldn't find the strength to go when he regained consciousness. I just kind of couldn't do it. And when I heard the news that he had finally passed away, then the outburst of emotion was that I hit a fist through a thick pane of glass on a door. So I broke the glass and also broke my fist. The last memory of him is the scar that I have on my knuckle. So he passed away. So that was my story.
But can you add the second part of the story, if there is such a compressed version? What has been your journey following these events in relation to how you feel about him and your relationship?
Well, I found healing in most of my emotional side. I kind of recognized the beast or the state that he was swallowed by, and my journey has been, inward journey mostly, and seeing that the states or conditions that happen to people can be alcohol, can be other obsessive behavior patterns, or things that swallow you up entirely. These can be dealt with inwardly, and also you can find peace through inner spiritual relationship with the spirit of the Father, which has been in my case the most life-changing experience. That there is, you can put together a dead father by pieces, by fragments, and gather him up again in you, internally, and that kind of can bring healing to the situation. Although you cannot rescue him in the physical, or you cannot, do it as you did.
But if I just put on devil advocate's hat now, what's the point of resurrecting a father who's been violent, who has rejected you and whatnot?
No, I don't think that you resurrect him in a sense, but you kind of see it without judgment. I think that's the key. Yeah, you can observe what happened without judgment and without resentment, and you just are free to say that's how it was. I think the difficult part is to decide to not be victimized by it, and not derive your conceptual identity from what has happened. When you get your identity, because fathers and identity are really closely linked, because father is kind of a source. You can also say why in the Christian story the father is the source of all existence. It's kind of the same principle, that we are from a source, and that is kind of the fatherhood's most important aspect, that it gives you a sense of identity. So when your identity is not victimized by this experience, then you are you're free from it. There are many levels in you that were not hit by this, although there are many levels also that were hit hard.
This ties into the next question that I wanted to look into, is what are the consequences if and when we have this inner tension or resentment or victim mode regards the father. And here today I was walking over the bridge and I had the reflection of my past, and I very clearly see how these few years when I was meeting him for the first time, then for the second time, exactly correlated with that period when I was looking for an answer. Who am I? What is my purpose? What do I actually want? What are my actual desires and actual values? And the closer I was moving to accepting my father as he is, I also at the same time was moving closer to answering these questions to myself. And then, of course, correlation does not prove causality. So in that way, we couldn't prove it.
but my gut feel and also literature that I read says that there is the causality, that it's like I would if I would paint a graphical image, then if from above comes information who I am and what I actually want, then the resentment towards father is like closing it. There's like a lid on top, and then this information cannot reach me. And then if I operate just from my own mind and ego perspective, I cannot answer these questions, because answer to these questions is somewhere deeper. And then what happens? Then we instead invent what we want. We invent it based on what we read in the bubble, the literature around us, the people who have done something more, and then we're like, okay, I want this. This is what I want. Although actually, this is not what I actually want. And then I've spent myself several years then chasing after this, what I think I want, only to realize that actually it's empty. It's like chasing wind.
Yeah.
What's your take on this? Like, meaning the question is, what are the bad consequences of having these unresolved issues? It doesn't matter if we can or cannot prove these consequences. Let's just talk about what we feel.
Well, first of all, what is the role of the father? What do you actually want from a good father? In the early years, basically what fathers do is they have to set boundaries. They have to kind of set boundaries around the family and provide a sense of safety and set of rules to follow, because these boundaries actually will give you the feeling of security for the mother and also for the child. But of course, when the child is grown or is growing, then the father's role becomes kind of pushing you through to take responsibility and going out there now. And he kind of should be a force when he's like, his biological seed is what brought life and brought you into this world. Then now his spiritual seed is actually his word of encouragement that should be behind you and giving you this sense that in one sense it's discomfort, because he pushes you out to take responsibility in the world, but also again that he is with you and he is giving you the approval that gives you courage to try things, and knowing that there is kind of safety in this relationship. And that is also, I see it all in all the archetypal stories. For example, before Jesus started his ministry, there was a voice from heaven that you are my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. And also when we take this back into the very beginning of the human story as it is written down, the fall story in the garden, then we can bring this principle down to what the first man lost was actually the father relationship. Because when Adam was giving the way, or he was shut out from the garden, he was also shut out from the relationship with the father. And from thence the problem with mind identity starts. And now man, tries to use his mind to gain power over the world. And it's a struggle that basically you cannot win. You have to go back again to the deep part of human mystery and find a way out there.
But the riddle or the hook here is that with mind power, it's possible to achieve the success as defined by some standard business or just social bubble principles. And then this creates the illusion that everything is okay. The only thing that starts to happen usually together with this is a growing feeling that people have that although kind of everything there is, I don't know, the house, the car, the family, it's still like the feeling is like, I heard exactly this phrase, like, and then this is because what I have in my life is not what I actually desire. It is what I have been somehow conditioned to think that I should desire. And then with mind, I can achieve this.
And I think it's the feeling comes really from disconnect with the source. Because when you try to satisfy the thirst and the hunger for something that you cannot really express, you don't know what you are hungering after, and you try to satisfy it first through building a strong game. You build your ego in the 20s, you're really successful in building it. It brings you success in some areas of life, relationships, maybe business success, and so on. But somewhere in the 30s, it inevitably happens that whatever is your strong suit, what you play, whether it's your some trait or some physical strength or even your looks, there comes a time when the strength becomes your weakness, and usually the weakness is then revealed when you overplay this card, and you get the major blow. You're knocked down from your high horse at some point in life, and that's actually, I think, one of the most significant and necessary events that makes the change, for the latter part, for the latter search. And then the search has to go inward, because the true satisfaction or true joy cannot be found in any outer experience or things. So, and that's the search for the Father, really.
But the funny thing here is that the social bubble, I mean, the loud voice is mostly constructed with this first period of life voices, because then people have more energy to speak out loud, to brag about, look what I have achieved, and this is how you do it. And then people, okay, this is how you should do it. I will try to repeat this as good as I can. There was this joke that where you can find the most knowledgeable guru, you cannot, because he's not trying to be found. He's actually almost doing the opposite.
Yeah, well, that's the great paradox. The thing is that the most valuable things in life, in my experience, are the simplest. It's not complicated in a sense that it's some secret knowledge somewhere, or it's a secret recipe. It's too simple, basically, and that's why people miss it. It's like in many stories, the most valuable thing is the most common looking thing. So you cannot recognize it often, and it's really, in a sense, it's like a stone that you walk over 1,000 times without noticing it for what it is. So that's the nature of the quest.
But let's look into it, meaning what's the solution? So first, I'm a systemic thinker, so I would just categorize. There are situations. Let's assume that we are always now discussing a situation where there's some resentment towards father. But then there can be a situation when the father is physically available, irrelevant if I want or not want to meet, and then he's not for whatever reason. Let's start with your example. The father has passed away, so you cannot meet him physically anymore. And at one moment you realize that, okay, maybe it makes sense to get rid of this inner tension at least. And then what?
Well, the difficult thing is that to come to the part when we realize that no effort can take you there, no personal ego power or knowledge can take you there. It first comes the part then when we try to use the effort, and we try to use all the things that are at our disposal, that we have tried to solve problem with before. So that's kind of inevitable that we do that first. In my case, I would not be here speaking to you today if there wasn't a specific type of experience which was not initiated or sought after by myself. It was just kind of handed to me, and in that sense, I cannot take credit for that part of the journey and said that it was like I did it, or I searched and I found. It was more like I was found by it. And then my journey was to discover or find out by what was I found or by who was I found. So it can happen in really, really mysterious ways. But yeah, it can be taught in one sense, and there is a lot of ways in the world that this road has been described. But eventually, it has to. It's a story of detachment. You cannot reach it without detaching, and detaching also from these emotions, these hurts, this victimhood, or wherever is keeping you. So eventually, you have to let things go.
But what was this? What found you, or who found you? Or you also mentioned the stone. So what was the stone for you?
Well, for me, in the 90s, I kind of, without knowing it or thinking it, I was kind of trying to slowly kill myself with drugs and all kinds of activities, alcohol and criminal living, basically, multiple relationships. My first son was born when I was 21 years old in 92. So, of course, I was not fit to be any kind of father for him. And the relationships then ended in the end of the 90s. And I was basically just, slowly killing myself. Did okay in the financial realm in business, but everything else was just crumbling. I was just slowly dying. And then one morning, when I was feeling really low after a long trip to Amsterdam with some friends, I had an encounter while I was at home alone. So, and the encounter was something that I could only describe as a being, a spiritual being, asking me if I want to continue this way or if I want to choose another life. And I knew, of course, that kind of would imply some totally different moral and standards that I could not bring myself to follow. So my thinking when this was happening was that if this now is really happening and I'm not delusional or having some sort of hallucination, then I would say yes, but knowing that I am not capable of doing any profound change in myself or taking myself, picking myself up from the mud and making myself worthy of it. So, and when I had this thought, I was changed at the spot. So it was a profound, life-changing event. And the change was so deep that now, 24 years later, it still amazes me how was I cut loose from all the bondage and dirt. And of course, it meant the total social change. So I lost all my relationships with them, with the social circle, because I was regarded as basically crazy.
But
So,
that pivotal experience, did it happen as a result of you asking for some guidance or help, or you just came home, wasted, you went to sleep, and then it happened? Like, was it somehow dependent on your will or no?
The only part from my will was when I was asked the question, if I want to choose this that I have, basically death or life. So the choice was handed to me at this moment, but I didn't search for it then. But when I scroll back to my early childhood, then there were events when I encountered these terrible visions of darkness. I couldn't, when I was living alone with my mother, I couldn't explain. There was like inexplicable terror that came upon me when I tried to fall asleep, and the terror was like there is a darkness coming and there is no stopping it. And I remember when I was child, then I sought a refuge from this terror. And I basically remember when I was child, I prayed to Jesus to take me from this and make a disciple out of me. So there was an underlying thing, but it was really like really far back from the actual experience.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you shared your story, I put together some puzzle pieces for myself for the first time, because I remember how and when I also let go the victim mindset towards father. I mean, for me, the chain which I remembered before our conversation was that there came understanding, that I understood him. And from that came forgiveness. And from that came letting go the victim mindhood. And then came the, okay, I want to find him. But now I pieced together why I understood him is that in my 20s, I had early 20s, I had a situation once when I found out that my girlfriend, whom I had at the time, had cheated on me. And somehow it affected me so deeply. I remember having experienced that as if inside of me another body separated, turned into glass, and that glass shattered, and those glass pieces were all over in my body with this very severe pain. And then several years afterwards, I was living. Now, when I look back, from zombie movies, zombies are moving, doing stuff, but they are not alive. So I was running not on blood. I was running on alcohol. I was having parallel relationships, emotionally abusive and accepting abuse, emotional. So it was quite crazy period, which led to a place which also felt like darkness. And to get out of this darkness somehow, and I think the idea was sent because I was sitting one evening at home and thinking like that this is like this life sucks too much. And then a thought came, okay, I should go to pilgrimage. So, and I Googled up what are the options, and I signed up, and then quite soon I went 2 weeks without the phone, nothing, for first time in my life into a pilgrimage. And at the end of this event, there was some music playing, and it was I had walked like 300 kilometers, more 350. There was some music playing, and I suddenly saw a vision that there's some force, and it felt like female energy. Some force is making like this somehow energy wave and picking up all these pieces of glass, and then they're fusing back with my body. And then I was crying like crazy on the ground, like crying my insides out for quite a while. And after this experience followed semi-intellectual experience, because I was also going to psychotherapy, and I was exploring the topic that, okay, now if I look back the ways how I was acting, and I compare it to the ways how my father was acting, then only the physical violence was lacking there. So, and then I thought, okay, but if I am like this, then what rights do I have to condemn him? That this is how life happens. This is how someone slapped me, then I slapped someone else, and then we continue this way. So, yes, meaning it correlates with this experience that something happened which you did not initiate, and it was similar. Although for me, this something was from outside, from nowhere came this, you should go to pilgrimage, and I followed this. And I think there are these pivotal invitations, suggestions coming either through someone or just directly, and we can choose to discard them. But then it's maybe it comes a couple more times, but I don't think it comes kind of repeatedly.
Well, after my experience, I remember one time I was in Tallinn, and I was in public transport, and suddenly an inner realization pops up in me, and I know that I have to go home and read from the Bible, Hebrews 12, chapter 12, verse 4. And if I remember it correctly, the wording might differ slightly, but the verse says that because every son God loves, he will punish. He will beat everyone he receives. And that was kind of, I didn't know about this verse at all. It was just given to me at that moment, and I went home and I read it, and I said, okay, what does that mean now? But for me at that moment meant that I was kind of adopted. So I was not fatherless anymore. So it was a really, really interesting confirmation was given that in that way.
Okay, but if we would end on this, then for anyone who listens, it would mean that, okay, there's no way how I can solve it. I just have to wait. Because actually, what is the parallel in our both stories? We, in a way, we reached the bottom of the suffering. Like there's this moment when it's like, I don't want this to continue anymore this way. But still, maybe there are some things that we can do. And I wrote down here some notes also while listening to you, just what I remember, because I had a slightly different situation because I had the father alive when I decided to find him and reconnect with him. That what were some pivotal moments with him was that if I would just describe it with one word, then it's exposure, meaning spending time together. Because when we spent time together, I didn't feel the hatred in the beginning, but I felt irritation. Like, how can you be like that? How can you say these things? But the more time I spent with him, somehow it just, this exposure reduced my irritation and gradually replaced it with acceptance that he is the way he is. That was one thing. And another thing is I somehow I had invented in my head that I need to hear from him some words of blessing, what you also mentioned, because I had never heard them. And then I thought, I will first observe, maybe he will figure out it himself. but he didn't. Then I literally told him that, okay, father, listen, in my childhood, things were like this. For example, I was bullied at school. You were not present there. I'm angry at you because of this. And I was surprised that he very empathetically, he said, I understand you. It must have been hard for you. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. And then I decided, okay, heck with it. I will just ask him directly. I told him, Father, can you tell me this sentence, please? And then I told him word by word what I want to hear from him, a blessing words. And he looked like a bit shy. And he said, yes, of course. And then he repeated this sentence. And I think this was super valuable package for me to receive it, even though I initiated to hear it from him.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because in a sense, what we're dealing with is really a worldwide issue. It's we are basically living in society with not many fathers, and also in a sense that we lack this kind of wisdom from father figures or mother figures, the older generation, so to speak. And it's kind of a, the Old Testament ends with a verse which says something like that and I will turn the hearts of the fathers towards the children and the hearts of the children towards their fathers, so that I won't bring a curse upon the land. So it's kind of a, without these words, without these blessings, we're kind of living in absence of something that is a vital part of the story, the narrative, and the search and the quest, and these words mean really a lot. And if your father is not around to speak those words, then again, you can look for somebody with the qualities of a father that you see, and they can substitute it for you. The words are really, really important.
Yeah, and speaking about this father figure, I was at the time I was in psychotherapy with a therapist who is a few years younger than me, and we both knew that we are working with the father topic. And then in the beginning, I confronted him a bit on this, and he said, "Okay, and what type of therapist or father figure do you expect?" And I told him, and I laughed how he was mixing in his work very humble attitude with cunning attitude. Cunning is like foxy, and he in a very humble way said, "I'm not like this. It's not me." And that led me to realize that, but I still want to work with you. So this means that there's something in you that, And later I felt this essence, that the essence, it's not the form so much, but the essence. Okay,
Yeah.
I also want to remind that the audience can ask questions. So as we are already moving in the last quarter of the time allocated, so chat is open, available for questions if you would like to. But please, Ingmar, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to state that the connection, the essence is always the connection, and the essence can be found, always internally. It's not an outside source, it's an internal source.
Yeah. Yes. But still, I want to return to the question, which is for me also not quite answered, that what is this something that I can do if I want to resolve the inner tension? Because now the stories we shared, they are, you kind of need to rely on some external happening.
Well, there is the promise is that to everyone who knocks, a door will be opened, and everyone who asks will receive. That's an internal knock. That's if you have the longing and you have this desire in you, then you have this request inside you. That's enough. I don't think that there needs to be anything more, but the desire for something. And when this is connected to the essence and not some materialistic or positional thing, then I think in one way or the other, the answer will come. The answer may be a feeling or some person that you need to try to talk to, or it might be your actual father that you need to reconnect with. So these things.
So basically, it starts with intent. You intend the particular change to happen, but this puts in a very interesting position that if I'm running from the position of mind power, and then I set intent to resolve this inner tension, which also means to move to the heart power, then the side effect of it is that at least in short term, life gets worse, because everything starts to get blocked because you cannot run in two directions at the same time. So the mind strategies start to fail and more and more and more until you give up the mind strategies. And this I see in many people who walk this self-development or spiritual development or psychological development path. So they have set intent to become internally freer, to gain internal fulfillment. And then the life gets worse in the beginning, not better.
Well, in the beginning of the journey, the first phase is meeting, the wild beasts, and the wild beasts are the intrusive thoughts and thought patterns and identification with the wrong things, and mostly it's identification with a narrative that you have about yourself that is the wrong source, that will never give you fulfillment. So it's a struggle. It's nothing easy about it, but it's one journey that it's worth taking. But it's the first parts of the journey are mostly desert, and actually learning to see what is happening in you as a witness is a big part of it in the beginning.
To read the signs, what is happening, and to adapt, yes. And I also wanted to add why life gets blocked and why it gets harder, because otherwise mind cannot adapt. It can adapt only, if you imagine you are running on a road, and then you just run. Mind just runs where it sees freeway, so you need to put obstacles so that the course is changed. And the obstacle materializes as some problems or just feeling stuck and not feeling like going that direction anymore. We have a question. I will read the part which contains the question. So is there any wisdom you can share on how to approach the resentment without necessarily experiencing the same behaviors as the father to relate to him? Question by Zane. So the question is that if I am not experiencing the same behaviors as the father,
then how to understand and accept. And this is a question from a female perspective towards the father. So Ingmar, do you have any take on this question?
Well, with any internal state as resentment, I think the first thing to do is always acknowledging that it's there, without any judgment upon yourself for feeling it. So it's always the first thing is to be the witness of the resentment in you, without trying to overcome it with your own, again, the mind's power. It cannot be done. So it's kind of taking a step back and curiously looking at what is going on, and basically saying like, yes, there is resentment there. I can feel it, but I'm not identified with a narrative which has this resentment or this victimhood. This is not who I am, but it's just at that stage it is present. That is the first thing, in my opinion, that one does.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but can you somehow go a bit deeper, because I heard your answer. I would like to ask the next question. Okay, but how do you do it? How do you get into this state of mind?
Well, the awakening in this journey starts with a realization that there is a voice in our head. So that's you have to when you start to know and notice that there is a voice in your head and the narrative is playing there, and most people gain their whole identity from that voice or that narrative. That basically is there is a picture that we have about ourselves, and the picture that we have about ourselves is not the real we, the real self. It's as about as real as a picture of a tree is a real tree. It's the thing that has happened to us that has led us to building this kind of narrative that we have. And the first step is to see that there is this is going on, and distancing that this is not who I am. This is the thing that I may derive a conceptual identity from, but I do not have to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of an art form, but basically it's looking at yourself with curiosity.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Farhad.
I get it. I also want to add three tiny pointers to Zana's question. One is and they might sound theoretical, but I've experienced them. So for me, they come through the lens of practice. So one is to really believe in the concept that everyone is doing the best they can and they cannot do better. It's like, I don't know, if I look at my dog and the dog sometimes vomits on the couch, that's how the dog is. He could not vomit. And this already, for me, releases some pressure. Then the second one is at least in my worldview, there's 50-50 responsibility in a couple. It's not that one is responsible 80% for the conflict and another is 20. It's like 50-50. Mother loves to provoke the father, father loves to yell at the mother. They both are playing their theater, drama triangle, everyone knows this. And then the third one is to see the mirror in the other. It's not always the direct mirror of the behavior. We need to look beyond the behavior. What is the adjective there? How they are acting? And then it's easier to find how we are acting in a similar fashion, either to others or to ourselves. Let's say, if I use father's example, he was lying. So he was the behavior was lying. The adjective that he was deceptive. And if I ask myself, am I deceptive? Absolutely. Sometimes to myself, sometimes to other people, I am. And this is where I can again release the pressure, because if I'm like that and I'm trying to be the best version of me I can,
then same goes for him. Next question. What is the goal for the father when raising a boy and when raising a girl? Albert has asked the question. As I don't have children, I would pass this question to you, so Ingmar.
Well, I have 3 boys, and the youngest one is the girl. And I would say when the girl is still, a young age, as much physical contact as possible is my best advice for fathers with girls. They really need to be secure and have the physical contact with the father, as much rough play as possible with girls and with boys too. The goal is always, encouragement, that they have courage and they are prepared to tackle the hardships of life, because the hardships will come. There is no way out of it. You cannot protect the child from the malevolence and from the suffering of the world. Only way to do it is to prepare them for it. And to prepare them for it, you need to be with them. You need to be available emotionally, with your attention, with time, and also closeness, emotionally and physically. You cannot be emotionally close to your children when you physically do not bring contact or do not touch them, for example. So as much as this as possible, and then encouragement. This is the most that the father needs to do to prepare them for the hard stuff. And then also pushing them towards taking responsibility and giving the best that they can do, not letting them to stay in the comfort zone for too long when the time comes. So pushing them out of the nest is becomes also at some point of life a father's responsibility, as mothers tend to want to keep them and protect them from the world, but that strategy does not work.
I guess there was also at least implied this question, what's the difference between raising a boy and a girl from father's perspective?
I myself do not really think of them differently. I think there is much more, in a sense of psychological differences in children that affects it, in my case, than of the gender of the child, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I cannot really address that in a sense that you do this with boys and you do this with girls.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Time for a few more questions. I had booked for us time a bit past 8, so we have a bit more time to answer questions. Ingmar, you can also ask questions, and I can ask questions. Let's see if there anything comes. I have a question to you, Ingmar. You mentioned before this call that this has been also a profound time for you in some inner revelations, your own self-discovery. Maybe it travels a bit further from the father's topic, but still, if you feel comfortable, can you share something on this? What are the recent things you have discovered in your own self-discovery journey?
Well, the easiest way to describe my past journey is a journey from doing to being, doing things that arise from the sense of being. So, as we all do in the first part of life, we mostly derive our identity and meaning from the things that we do. And for me, now the journey is more into the being, or the deeper levels of beingness, as I would say it, which is where the fountain of life and joy and peace are, which are not circumstantial. So despite of the circumstances, there is a level of connectedness and level of life that is always flowing under the surface of the mind activity and the ego. So to reach and be more in connectedness with this source is kind of been my quest for the past half a year, and it's really glorious and full of joy, this journey when there is no need for external validation anymore, and no need for anything to happen to make yourself feel worthy or happy.
But how do you feel? Is it connected to a life stage, maturity, age, or this is something that someone can aim to achieve at any life stage?
It certainly is, and I think it's the journey kind of starts usually in the 30s, but I have men in my circle who are in their 50s and they haven't started yet. So it certainly becomes easier with age, without doubt. Yeah, it's a lot easier in the second part of life, which doesn't mean that it's automatically going to happen, unfortunately.
You are quoting scripture quite a lot today. For past few weeks, I have one verse going around in my head, which is, I don't remember the exact wording, but the idea is that if you sow in wind, then you reap wind also. And this came to me through perspective that if you seek solutions to internal struggles outside of yourself, then what you get is just wind, meaning nothing.
I really like the quote from Carl Jung, and he said two quotes. First is that the thing that you most want to find is where you least want to look.
Okay, I hadn't heard this one. This is very good.
And the second one is that whoever looks outside sleeps, whoever looks inside awakens.
Yes, this one I have heard. This one is good. Unless there comes additional question, I feel this is a good on which to conclude the conversation.
Sun is setting. My light is going out.
You are natural in all ways. You were in natural daylight, yeah?
Yeah. Well, at the moment, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, I see there are no more questions. Then with this, we can also conclude. Ingmar, thank you for joining the call. Thank you everyone who came to watch or listen. Ingmar, any conclusion words from you?
Well, thanks everybody who joined, and I wish you luck in your search, and yeah, search and you will find.